Welcome to humanity's Vanguard HFY and Sci-Fi stories. They thought humans were insignificant subcontractors. They did not realize we were the leverage. Out beyond the Terran frontier, where corporate borders replaced national ones, the Helix Corridor shimmered with energy harvest arrays owned by the Virexium Stellar Combine. Their species resembled draconic silhouettes sculpted from living plasma, elongated forms of radiant cobalt and white fire contained within magnetic exoshells. They were not an empire. They were a dynasty of shareholders. Hendrix Moreno, civilian logistics architect, had been contracted to optimize supply algorithms for Waypoint Theta 9, a remote processing node embedded inside a dwarf star's magnetic wake. The Virexium believed humans were adaptable but economically primitive, useful in margins, replaceable. Hendrix noticed something the Combine's predictive engines dismissed: irregular power deficits during stellar flare cycles. Not mechanical failure. Behavioral lag. The Virexium trusted models more than improvisation. That was their first miscalculation. The local Virexium executive overseeing Theta 9 manifested before him in a containment lattice of refracted light. Her designation translated roughly to Seralith Vale, Chief Continuity Officer. Among her kind, aesthetic symmetry indicated processing supremacy. Seralith's plasma form curved in deliberate arcs, luminous wing like flares folding behind her in controlled waves of ionized brilliance. Even by alien metrics, she was exceptional. Human Moreno, her voice resonated directly through the station grid, harmonic and precise. Your species specializes in redundancy. Our projections do not require it. Hendrix did not bow. He rotated a hollow model of the flare pattern instead. Your projections assume the star behaves statistically. It doesn't, he replied. It hesitates. The board back on Virexium Prime dismissed his report within seconds. Their hive market cognition functioned like synchronized lightning fast, unified, rigid. Seralith alone delayed termination of his contract. Explain hesitation, she ordered. Hendrix smiled slightly. Stars, he said, have moods, and that was the second miscalculation. The Virexium Combine processed existence through yield metrics. Energy in. Profit out. Their hive-linked consciousness pooled shareholder cognition into collective directives, eliminating dissent as inefficiency. They believed emotional variance was noise. Maddox Soto, human systems engineer assigned under Hendrix, discovered the anomaly first. During peak extraction windows, microfluctuations cascaded across the corridor like a ripple of suppressed resistance. The star's magnetosphere wasn't random. It was reacting. Morgan Reese, astrophysicist consultant, confirmed it. Your harvesting arrays are over-synchronizing, she told Seralith during a tri-species review. You're forcing uniform draw across non-uniform plasma currents. The board rejected the claim. Their doctrine forbade asymmetrical extraction. Standardization maximized dividends. Then the flare storm arrived early. Waypoint Theta 9's outer collectors destabilized. Energy backflow surged toward inhabited rings, toward thousands of human subcontractors and Virexium life forms alike. Seralith initiated liquidation protocols. Hendrix overrode them. You shut down now, you collapse the corridor, he snapped. You need controlled chaos. The phrase alone sent disruption through the hive link. Controlled chaos was heresy, but extinction was worse. Hendrix executed what no Virexium algorithm would authorize. He desynchronized the entire harvest grid. Instead of uniform energy draw, he staggered collectors in irregular pulses based on real-time human intuition teams positioned across the corridor. Jocelyn Anthony coordinated those teams manually, bypassing automated arbitration layers. The system looked unstable, wild, unprofitable. It worked. Energy pressure redistributed unevenly, bleeding flare intensity across flexible buffers. The star's magnetic convulsions eased, not suppressed, but accommodated. Instead of forcing dominance over stellar behavior, humanity adapted around it. For 13 minutes, the Combine's profit index plummeted. For 13 minutes, the corridor survived. When stability returned, Theta 9's output was lower but sustainable. Sarilith observed the aftermath in silence. The hive board's collective signal flickered with computational dissonance. Humans had violated doctrine and prevented systemic loss. That was the strategic reversal. The board convened to audit the incident. Their verdict was predictable. Humanity introduced volatility. Volatility threatened long-term yield. Recommendation: terminate human contracts and integrate enhanced predictive cores. Sarilith did something unprecedented. She abstained. In Virexium governance, abstention fractured consensus flow. Her light form dimmed slightly as she isolated her cognition from the hive's dominant frequency. Your models assumed compliance from reality, she transmitted to the board. The star does not comply. Humans do not either. That is their value. Hendrix was summoned not for reward, but for justification. You acted without authorization, Sarilith stated, hovering across from him in a chamber overlooking the dwarf star's corona. Up close, her plasma currents braided like living auroras. Beautiful. Dangerous. Controlled power barely contained. Yes, Hendrix answered calmly. Because authorization would have killed everyone. A pause. You calculated risk emotionally correct, the word echoed. For the first time in Combine history, emotional variance entered a shareholder transcript. The crisis exposed deeper instability. The Combine's hive market cognition, optimized for profit, was brittle under adaptive stress. If a rival corporate dynasty exploited similar flare cycles, entire corridors could be destabilized. Sarilith proposed a restructuring, hybrid cognition nodes integrating human unpredictability teams directly into executive forecasting layers. The board resisted. Hendrix escalated. If you remove us, he said during open arbitration, you're not eliminating volatility. You're blinding yourselves to it. Morgan Rees projected simulations showing corridor collapse under purely algorithmic governance within 2 decades. Maddox demonstrated how irregular pulse harvesting increased long-term stellar longevity. Jocelyn revealed human coordination response times outperforming hive consensus during anomalies. One by one, metrics shifted. Profit curves dipped short-term. Survival curves rose long-term. The Combine faced a paradox: maximize immediate yield or ensure generational dominance. Sarilith cast the deciding vote. She sided with asymmetry. The restructuring transformed the Helix corridor. Human unpredictability cells became permanent fixtures within Virexium executive architecture, not laborers. Strategic variables. Sarilith adapted visibly over subsequent cycles. Her plasma form shifted less rigid symmetry, more fluid harmonic variance. She began conducting independent cognition bursts outside high frequency, something previously deemed inefficient. One private convergence later, she addressed Hendrix without formal modulation. You are statistically disruptive, she said. Thank you, he replied. In our culture, beauty is defined by optimal pattern alignment. She continued, luminous currents folding softly around her magnetic frame. Your species is misaligned, and misalignment appears to generate resilience. Across the corridor, output stabilized at slightly lower peaks, but dramatically reduced collapse risk. Rival dynasties recalibrated their strategies, unable to predict hybrid human Virexium responses. The Combine had not become emotional. It had become adaptive. Years later, the flare cycles were no longer crises but managed dialogues between star and civilization. Hendrix Moreno remained civilian by title, but his methodologies were embedded into executive doctrine. Maddox led decentralized engineering clusters. Morgan oversaw stellar temperament modeling. Jocelyn commanded corridor response fleets. Sarilith rose within the dynasty not through dominance, but through strategic divergence. In a final convergence overlooking the star's radiant turbulence, she regarded Hendrix. You were insignificant subcontractors, she admitted. Still are, he said lightly. No, she corrected. You are leverage. The dwarf star flared again wild, brilliant, untamed. This time, the corridor pulsed irregularly in answer, not forcing order, not surrendering control, adapting. Humanity had not conquered the Combine. We had rewritten how it survived. Subscribe to Humanity's Vanguard HFY and Sci-Fi stories to witness the next operation before it's logged into the archive.